Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. Today is episode 2 of Ansible Zero to Hero series, and in this video we are going to cover the concepts like passwordless authentication. What exactly is passwordless authentication? Why is it prerequisite for running Ansible? We will see two different ways of implementing passwordless authentication. Then we will understand what exactly is Ansible Inventory, which is the core concept and heart of Ansible. So we will also cover Ansible Inventory in this video. Then we will learn what exactly are Ansible Adhoc commands, how to use them, and what are the use cases for Ansible Adhoc commands. So this video is going to be very interesting. Please try to watch it till the end. Before we get started, if you are new to the channel and if you are new to this series, let me tell you, this is 14 episode series. So we will do 14 episodes in the Ansible Zero to Hero series. Each episode, we will learn new concepts, and towards the end, we will master Ansible. We have already completed day 1, where we learned what is Ansible, what are the advantages of using Ansible over shell scripting and Python scripting. We also learned how to install Ansible and how to configure Ansible plugins in the Visual Studio Code. So that was day 1. If you are interested, you can either use the link in the description or go to a playlist called Ansible Zero to Hero on the channel. We also have complete notes for this series. For example, today is day 2. If you go to the day 2 folder, you can find all the concepts that I'm going to cover in this video. After watching this video, you can come back to this notes MD files and you can use them as revision material. You can start this repository, fork it, watch it to get the continuous updates. Now let's go to the whiteboard and start with our first topic for today, that is passwordless authentication. Now, what exactly this means and why is it considered as a prerequisite for Ansible? Let me explain with example. In the last class, we learned that Ansible has something called as control node. Control node is the one where you install Ansible. You can also call it as master, where Ansible is installed. So a DevOps engineer, it can be you or anyone in your team, provide instructions to Ansible that is installed on this control node. How are the instructions provided? Either you can provide the instructions through the YAML format, which are called as Ansible playbooks, or you can provide the instruction through ad hoc commands, which is the command line. What kind of instructions? Instructions can be as simple as to install Nginx on the manage nodes. Now, what is manage nodes? Manage nodes are the instances or the servers which you want to manage through Ansible. So if a DevOps engineer provide an instruction to install Nginx either through Ansible playbook or through ad hoc commands to the Ansible that is installed on the control node. Now Ansible tries to execute this action to install Nginx on 1, 2, 3, 4 or any number of manage nodes that you have in your Ansible or that you want your Ansible to manage. Now the question is, when Ansible tries to execute this instruction, which is to install Nginx, Ansible takes your instruction, tries to go to this virtual machine, and this virtual machine will block. Similarly, this virtual machine also blocks. This virtual machine also blocks, and this virtual machine will also block. Why? Because any virtual machine, any physical server, or any instance, it can be public cloud instance or private cloud instance, will ask for authentication, right? It is not possible that you can talk to a physical or virtual machine without providing authentication. There are two ways of authentication. You might be already aware. One is you can provide password, or second is you can provide SSH keys, which is you provide your public key and private key. So you have your public key set up on your target virtual machines, and using private key, you can talk to them. These are the two ways of authentication which are universally accepted by any virtual machines. So now, if you are not setting up this authentication with the virtual machines, obviously the request will be blocked and Ansible cannot install or upgrade any softwares on the virtual machine. So that's why a prerequisite, right? You cannot sit and wait for Ansible to ask you to provide password or SSH key every time it gets executed. Then you are not doing any automation, right? Whenever Ansible is running, if you are providing password of each of this virtual machine, or if you are providing SSH key of each of this virtual machine, then you are sitting there waiting for Ansible asking that permissions from you. Then you have blocked the automation, or you are not doing any automation. Instead, if you set up a prerequisite where you set up passwordless authentication between your Ansible control node and the managed nodes of your Ansible, then every time when you run Ansible, it will directly talk to those virtual machines and execute the instructions. That's why passwordless authentication is a prerequisite for your Ansible. Now you might ask, but Abhishek, what do you mean by passwordless authentication? Right? Whenever from my personal laptop or through one virtual machine, when I try to connect to the other virtual machine, it can be a cloud instance, it will always ask me for either SSH key, that is the PEM file, or it will ask me for password. Now, what do you mean by passwordless authentication? So passwordless authentication is a mechanism where you tell the virtual machine, if you call this as virtual machine A and this as virtual machine B. Now, using passwordless authentication, you can tell this virtual machine B that anytime you get a request from virtual machine called A, do not ask for password. So basically, you tell your virtual machine B that you can always trust the virtual machine A. If it tries to connect, allow the access to virtual machine A. This mechanism is called as passwordless authentication. So for passwordless authentication, what you need to do is you have to initially, okay, for the first time when virtual machine A or your laptop is trying to connect to virtual machine B, only for the first time you have to provide the password. Again, either you can provide the password or you can provide the PEM file. But this is only one-time activity. Initially, when you provide the authentication through password or PEM file, from next time, the virtual machine will not ask you anytime you connect from this virtual machine A. Now, it can be any human being trying to connect from this virtual machine to this virtual machine. It can be Ansible, it can be SSH agent, it can be Python, doesn't matter. If you set up passwordless authentication, either the services from this machine, human being, anybody can connect without the password. This process is called as passwordless authentication. Don't worry, we will see it live, and I'm going to show you passwordless authentication in two different ways. You know, the core concept of both the ways is to use a command called SSH copy ID. But the two ways that I'm going to show is one by providing the password for the first time, and second is by providing SSH key for the first time, right? So that in your organization, whichever is used, because in some organizations, or even if you take AWS EC2 as an example, by default, EC2 blocks password authentication. That is, you cannot talk to an EC2 instance using password. Only allowed way of authentication to an EC2 instance by default is by providing the SSH key or the PEM file. So in that cases, if you're dealing with EC2 instances in your organization, you need to know how to set up passwordless authentication using SSH key. Let's say in your organization, you have some Azure VMs or you have any other virtual machines which allow access through password. You should also know this way of setting up passwordless authentication using SSH copy ID command, the password way. So that's why we are going to cover both the ways in this video. Don't worry, I'm going to show through an EC2 instance. So what we will do is, let me refresh. So now I don't have any instances in the running state. Both of them are terminated. What we are going to do is, let's take two instances. Okay, because we are going to learn two different mechanisms, and we'll click on the launch instance. Let me call this as server, or better, let's call it as manage node, because I'm going to use my laptop as the control node, and I will create two manage nodes on the AWS platform. So let's select the number of instances as 2. We'll use Ubuntu instances because a lot of people will be familiar with Ubuntu. T2 micro, provide a key value pair. So I already have a key value pair that I have created. Otherwise, you can click on this button. Abhi AWS key pair. Make sure you edit the network configuration and see that auto assign public IP is enabled. If not, you will not get a public IP address. That's it. I don't want to change any other configuration. I'll click on launch instance. So what I've done, I have just created two EC2 instances. Okay. So I'm going to use my laptop as control node, where I already installed Ansible in the previous class, and I will connect to two virtual machines which I'm going to create on the AWS platform. These are the EC2 instances, and one, I will set up passwordless authentication using SSH key. Second, I will set up the passwordless authentication using password, so that you will learn both of the ways. But Abhishek, you said on an EC2 instance, password authentication is disabled. Don't worry, I will connect to this EC2 instance and I will enable password authentication on the EC2 instance, because I want to show you how it works. Right? If in the last class, anyone were not able to install Ansible, let's say some of you are using Windows machines, I recommended WSL. Some people have asked, Abhishek, can you explain how to install WSL? It's a very, very simple thing. If you have Windows machine, just search for install WSL. You will get this link from Microsoft, and you can install WSL in matter of 20-30 minutes, all the installation, execution, and setup. If you still have questions, you can ask me in the comment section. I will borrow a Windows laptop and I will try to show how to install WSL. But if you follow this article, I think it will not take you much time. You can install WSL by your own. So I'm assuming everyone has set up Ansible on your machines. Okay, our instances are created. Let's go. And let me try to refresh. Perfect. So let me call this as manage node 1. And let me call this as manage node 2. Cool. I have two manage nodes which are running state. Now what I'll do is, for the first instance, that is this particular one, let's set up passwordless authentication using SSH keys. Go to our GitHub material, click on the Day-02 folder, click on passwordless authentication. This is the command. Whether you are on Windows, whether you are on Mac OS, whether you are on Linux, if you have SSH installed, you will have this command called as SSH copy ID. By default, you will have it, so you don't have to worry. So this is my terminal. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy this command, and in the command, I will replace the public IP of the instance, copy it, replace here, and replace the path to PEM file. Abhishek, will you not explain the command? I'm going to explain it. Don't worry. Now the path to identity file on my machine, I have it in the path downloads, and I think the name of the file is Abhi AWS keypair.pem. Okay, so now let's execute this instruction. So it is asking, are you sure you want to continue connecting? Yes, I'm sure. So it said, okay, the passwordless authentication is established. Now try logging into the machine. So for the first time, let's execute this command. It is asking us to execute this command. Okay, connected. Now what I'm going to do is I will not provide any identity file. Watch carefully. Again, I have copied this. I just said SSH Ubuntu @ the IP address. Perfect. I am connected from my laptop to this EC2 instance, even without providing the identity file. Usually what we do, we run this command, right? SSH -i path to your identity file, wherever it is. Then we just say Ubuntu @ IP address. But now what I've done, I have set up passwordless authentication. So it works without asking for the password. Now, what is the advantage of it? Like I've mentioned, if you set up passwordless authentication, I might be repeating it, but I want you to understand the concept. When you set up the passwordless authentication, it can be human beings who are connected to that particular machine, or any services such as Ansible that is running on that machine can connect to the manage node, which is EC2 instance in our case, without asking for SSH key. So you have set up the prerequisite for Ansible on this virtual machine. Now, Abhishek, I want to learn the password way as well, because in my organization, we don't use SSH keys. We directly connect to instances with EC2 instances or any instances with password. Can you show that? For sure. Now, again, I am back on my laptop. I'll go to the second EC2 instance. Okay, this is little tricky. Watch carefully. I'll go to the second EC2 instance, and what I'm going to do is, sorry, I can just check box and I can just say connect. Right here, first connect through the terminal, or you can connect through SSH key, whatever you feel comfortable. Okay, let me increase the font size. Sudo, go to this file called vim etc ssh sshd config.d, and you have a cloud init script in case of your AWS. So this is your cloud init script, which is updating the SSH configuration. So just go here and you will find a field. Sorry, here you will find a field. There is something wrong with this particular instance. If it doesn't work, we will update from our laptop itself. No problem. Okay, there is something wrong with the terminal, the AWS instance connect. So what I'm going to do is let me connect to that instance using SSH first. And then update the file that I'm going to show you. No worries. So we will take the public IP address of this second instance. Previously, we connected to 13.235. Now we are connecting to 13.201. SSH -i, again, the path B AWS Ubuntu @ this instance 201. Perfect. That one. And now what I'm going to do, sudo vim etc sshd config.t and go to this cloud init script and just say password authentication as yes. Now, if you are not on the AWS EC2 instance, then you can simply update this file. That is, Abhishek, we are not using EC2 instances in my organization. No problem. Just go to SSH, right? Here you will see a file called as sshconfig, and you will also see a file called sshd.config. Sorry, sshd_config. And in this file, you will have field called as password authentication. Just come to this file and update password authentication. See, it is commented. You can just come here and uncomment, just like this. Similarly, wherever you find that field called password authentication, it can be in different files in your organization, but within this SSH folder, just update it. And then you need to run the command. Just restart the SSH process, which I have put here. Perfect. Now I've restarted and I will just log out of this instance. Okay, I've logged out of this. Sorry, I have to log back in. One more thing that I have to do is, firstly, I need to create password for my Ubuntu user. Now what I've done is I have enabled password authentication, right? But still you need a password to connect to it. So I'll run this command called password Ubuntu using the sudo user. Provide a password. You can provide anything of your wish, but just remember the password. Done. Now let's log out. And what I'll do, SSH copy ID, same command, but this time I'll just say Ubuntu @ and immediately it will ask me for the password. See, here it is asking for password. Previously, if you try to do it, right, don't do this step that I have shown. Do not enable password authentication as I have explained in the documentation. Don't do this process. Then when you try to run this command SSH copy ID, it will prompt and say public key access denied. But because I have made this change, now it is asking for password. I will provide the password. Okay, now I have provided the password. Now I'll again do SSH Ubuntu @ this IP. See, passwordless authentication is set up without using the SSH keys. What I've done, I've created password for the Ubuntu user. I have enabled password authentication. I've restarted the SSH process, and now the passwordless authentication in this case is set up using password. So we have covered two ways. We have covered the SSH key way. We have covered the password way. You can use any of this approach in your organization. You don't have to follow both the approaches. Just because different companies have different way of dealing the login process, I try to explain both the process. Now, what did you achieve till now? Abhishek, what did I achieve? Can you explain in one line? Yes, the thing that you have achieved is your control node. In your case, your laptop, where Ansible is installed, can talk to your managed nodes, in our case, 2 EC2 instances, without asking for password. This will help Ansible to run any instructions that is provided by the user through YAML or ad hoc command without asking for the password. So Ansible is now not blocked. You don't have to wait for Ansible. You can just run it through Jenkins. You can run it during the night time by using a cron job, or you can schedule your Ansible playbooks. They will execute without any interruption, and they will just tell you that the execution is successful. Perfect. So our first topic for today is done. Let's go back to the course content. So the passwordless authentication topic is done. Now, what is Ansible Inventory? Till now, whenever I explained you that Ansible control node, I have been explaining that Ansible control node will execute instructions on the manage node. I kept telling the same thing again and again, but how will Ansible control node understand what are the manage nodes, right? In our case, we are going to use two EC2 instances. Okay, but how will Ansible know that these two EC2 instances are my control nodes? There is a way that has to be there for Ansible to know what are its managed nodes, and that process is called as Ansible Inventory. Actually, it's just a file, right? So you just provide Ansible a file, and within the file, you just put the name of your managed nodes. Name is nothing but the user as well as the IP address. Now the Ansible inventory can be written in two formats. Initially, when Ansible was incepted, the only way of doing it is using the inventory.ini file. But now you can also put the inventory in the YAML file format. But the most popular approach is the inventory.ini file. What is inventory.ini file? Don't worry. INI is just an extension. Okay. Inventory file is very, very simple. It looks as simple as this. For example, here, if I have to write, let me go back to my laptop. Okay. If I have to write inventory file, I'll just say vim inventory.ini, and I can simply put the user ID Ubuntu @ don't forget the user ID, because Ansible also has to know with which user it has to connect, right? I mean, to which user it has to connect, followed by the IP address. In our case, we have two managed nodes, right? This is managed node 1. Just copy the IP address. Then Ubuntu @ the other managed node 2. Now, when you put both of your files, did I put it correct? Yeah. When you put both of your servers along with the user ID into this file called inventory.ini, inventory.ini can be in any location. Okay, people get little confused here. So that's why I'm trying to explain. Inventory.ini can be anywhere on your machine. You just have to pass the location of your inventory.ini to your Ansible execution. Let's say you don't want to provide, Abhishek, I don't want to use custom inventory.ini, and I don't want to provide the location of it every time when I run Ansible. Don't worry. If you just put your inventory.ini file into this location called /etc Ansible hosts. Okay. In this case, a file called hosts, the name of the file is hosts, act as your inventory.ini file. Okay. You can create this file in the location on your laptop or on your control node. If it is already available, you can just edit it. In some installations of Ansible, you will not have it. So just go to etc folder, create a folder called Ansible, and then create a file called hosts. This will act as your default inventory file. right? So just to repeat, inventory is heart of your Ansible. Why? Because it will tell your Ansible control node to which servers it has to talk. That is, what are your Ansible manage nodes? What is the extension of inventory? Either you can write inventory file in YAML format or to a file called .ini extension. It can be inventory.ini, host.ini, whatever you would like to call, but the extension has to be .ini. If you don't want to provide inventory file every time, just go to the file called /etc Ansible followed by host. If you don't have this file in the location, create the file. And if you put any servers in this location, Ansible, if you don't provide any inventory.ini file, will pick up this file. What is the recommended approach? You might ask. This is the recommended approach because the Ansible control node might be used by multiple projects in your organization. Although you can group list of servers in the inventory file, it is recommended that every project creates their own inventory.ini file and pass to the Ansible execution because they have full control to the inventory.ini file. Tomorrow, if they want to delete some servers from it, add some servers to it, they have the complete control. Now, Abhishek, can we see this practically? For sure. So I have used this file called inventory.ini. Now, anytime I execute Ansible Adhoc commands or Ansible playbook. Let me execute one Ansible Adhoc command. I know you don't know what is Ansible Adhoc command, but just to show you, what I can simply do, Ansible -i, which is the location of your inventory file. In this case, it's in the same location. So let me just say -i inventory.ini -m, that is a Ansible module called ping. And I want to execute this on all the servers in the inventory.ini file. I'll just say all. Now what will happen is Ansible executed this particular module or task, whatever you would like to call, a command called ping on both the servers, and I received success from both the servers. See here, I received success from this particular instance called 13.235.241.102. Similarly, the other one as well. So you can do things like this where I'll cover Ansible Adhoc commands, but just because we are here, I can also share -m shell, and I can just say -a, that is argument, where I'll just say apt install, let's say OpenJDK, and I can just say all. Now, what does all mean? Okay, all here means all the servers in the inventory file. Abhishek, can I give one server also? Definitely. Okay, what you can also do, instead of -m ping, instead of running on all the instances, which we just did, I can just take one server in the inventory file and try to run. Okay, now you can see that ping will only be executed on this machine. What happens if I don't have this in the inventory file? Let's go to the inventory.ini. Sorry, what was it? 102. So I'll just remove this, or I'll just comment this out. Okay, I have commented it out. And now let's run the same command. See, it said could not match supplied host pattern. Sorry, there was some audio issue. Yeah, ignoring this particular thing because it was not available in the inventory file. Let me just see if audio is clear. Yep. Now we can just go back to the inventory file and remove this. Yeah, run the command again. You will see it is passing. You will get the response as Pong. So you just said ping and Pong. This is just a test module in Ansible. Perfect. So you have to put all your managed nodes into the Ansible inventory file. If you don't put, Ansible will not understand. Now your question can be, Abhishek, I have a strange requirement, or I have a special requirement, not strange, sorry, where I don't want to use all. Similarly, I don't want to run it on one server also. In our organization, we have two different types of servers. One is app servers, right? Where we have 10 app servers. And another is we have database servers where we have 5 database servers. Okay. Now, if I put all these 15 instances into the Ansible inventory file, and if I say all, it will run on all 15 instances. Otherwise, I have to provide each and every IP address. I don't want to do both of them. When I receive a task to update app servers, I want a mechanism where I only run on app servers. And similarly, if the requirement is to run on DB servers, I have to do that. Is it possible? Can I group servers in the inventory file? Absolutely, yes. So what you can do is, let's say in your organization, your requirement is, if you have app servers, now let me create this bracket and call it as app, then give some spacing, doesn't matter how much, then let's call it as DB servers. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is same command, okay, which is the one that I've executed. Yep. So Ansible -i inventory ini -m ping. Now instead of all, what I'll just do is say DB. Now let's see what happens. See, it executed only on the DB server. Now let's say app. It executed only on the app server. So this is called as grouping of your Ansible manage nodes. Make sure you follow the terminology because a lot of people call it as master, slave, but Ansible recommends calling as control nodes and manage nodes. So if you go for an interview, it is better you call control node as your node where Ansible is installed and manage nodes as your target nodes. That's why I keep repeating control nodes and manage nodes. A lot of people say master slave, but this is better. Okay. Now we also learned what is an inventory file. If we go back to our content for today, so we learned passwordless authentication. We learned Ansible inventory. Now what is Adhoc command? Very simple concept. You will learn it in next 5 minutes. I think you already learned because I have been using a simple Adhoc command called ping. So in Ansible, there are two ways of providing instructions. Okay. First way is the very popular way where you write Ansible playbooks, which is in the YAML format, which we are going to learn in the future classes. Or second is ad hoc commands. Okay. Now, what is the difference between them? Abhishek, you are giving instructions to Ansible on my control node. How does it matter if I do it using YAML files or ad hoc commands? You can simply understand them as, running some instruction on your AWS. This is through CloudFormation template, just for an example. And this is through AWS CLI command. When will you go for AWS CLI command? When you feel that your task is simple, right? Or when you don't want to write a complete CFT, or when you don't want to write complete Terraform file, right? Or complete any ISC tool YAML files or template files, you simply go with AWS CLI. Similarly, don't worry if you don't know AWS, ignore that. When you want to do simple tasks can be just installing a Apache server or creating files on the target server, restarting servers. Okay. Or your task can be as simple as installing Node.js. So these are just one step activities, right? Comparing them with your task is to install Oracle, which has maybe like 50 steps, or your task is to set up a complete packaging for your database, or complete packaging along with softwares upgrades for your app server, web server, as well as your database server. So when you have such complicated tasks, best example is Oracle database installation, or installing some packages required for your Kubernetes, then go with playbooks, right? As a DevOps engineer, please do not ignore ad hoc commands. They are also very, very important and useful. Just that if you use playbooks, they are reusable. Once you write a playbook, you can share that playbook with other colleagues. You can put them in Git so that you can version control it. You can track them because they are the YAML files. You can collaborate with other colleagues in your organization. You can use them as modules, roles. So playbooks have n number of advantages. But when your task is simple, when your task can be done by writing one simple Ansible ad hoc command, why should you go for playbooks, right? So example, I was testing connection with the all instances that I have in the inventory file. The module that I'm using is just a ping module, a task or a module in Ansible, which is ping. So I can simply say Ansible -i, the location of the inventory file. If you are using default inventory location, that is in /etc Ansible host, you don't have to provide this as well. But better approach, provide the inventory file. -m, whatever the module that you are trying to use, and what are the servers. This is the pattern, right? Let's write the pattern. So the ad hoc commands syntax is that first write Ansible, then if you want to provide the location of the inventory file, provide that. Then -m, whatever the module that you want to write. Then you provide any argument to your module. Finally, the servers that you want to execute. Is it DB servers, or is it app servers, or all servers, right? Let's try to convert this. It will become Ansible location of the inventory file -m shell is a module. Abhishek, how do you know that? Very simple. Go to Ansible introduction to ad hoc commands. Spend 1 to 2 hours on this. Okay. The assignment for today is you all go back, spend time on Ansible ad hoc commands, because there are 15 to 20 modules. It's better if you go through those modules. I will be explaining the high level how Ansible ad hoc commands works. What are the use cases? I'll use some Ansible ad hoc commands. But if you spend 1 to 2 hours today, you will complete Ansible ad hoc commands, and this particular concept becomes easy for you. You will master the concept basically if you spend 1 to 2 hours. -m shell, and if my attribute or argument is to run apt update, I'll put that in -a, and then I will say all or db or app, whatever I would like to. So you only need to know what is module, what is argument. If you know these two things, then you have completed Ansible ad hoc commands. In my case, what I was doing, I was just using a module called ping. There are no attributes required for ping, and I have done this. Now let's say my task is to list files in the etc folder of manage nodes. How will I write ad hoc command? Ansible -i inventory.ini -m, what is the module? Shell is the module. -a attribute, argument actually. Argument, I'll just say ls or let's say sudo better, etc sudo ls etc on all the servers. You will see now Ansible will execute this instruction on both of my machines. So it executed on both of the machines. So there are a lot of files. It executed on this particular machine and it will also execute on the other machine. That's it. So this is how you run Ansible ad hoc commands. If you want to know what are some of the popular modules, shell is a very popular module. It's very simple. Provide -m module as shell and argument as any shell command that you want to execute. You can install Java, you can install Node.js, you can install a web server, you can update the version of a package using this shell module. Just go to this, like I've explained, and try to explore other modules that are available. Common task done by DevOps engineers using ad hoc commands, managing files, that is just to create some files, update permissions of some files, delete some files. It can be logs, it can be to rotate the logs, huge files on the machines, managing packages, that is just like I explained, create Apache or create Nginx or any particular thing. Then other cases can be simply copying contents to a file, where copy a file or copy some content to a file, adding few lines to a file, something like that. So this is how you use Ansible ad hoc commands, passwordless authentication, as well as inventory in Ansible. Thank you so much for watching the video today. Just spend 1 to 2 hours on revising the material that I have provided, as well as ad hoc commands using the Ansible documentation, and you are done and dusted with this topic. See you all in the next video. I hope you found it useful. Let me know in the comment section. Bye bye. Take care, everyone.